Hey there, everybody, and welcome back to Saturdays with Dblox, episode 3. I turned down the camera angle a little bit, so my hands were like this before. They were like coming out of nowhere, but now they're like connected to elbows and stuff, so I thought that might look better. Today, I wanted to talk to you guys about a concept that I call the paradox of the present, which is centered around this idea that we do not truly experience the present at any point in our lives, and that the past, present, and future are really abstractions of time meant to help us better understand and communicate, but they tend to lead us to trying to experience life in a way that isn't the way that the world works. Like, time itself does not follow the past, present, and the future as we understand it. And I'm going to try and explain this as best as I can, because I do think that the idea itself has merit if I can explain it well enough. And then I'm going to try and tie it back around to a greater idea that I think is kind of beneficial just about how you should live your life. So the first part of this I'd like to kind of delve into is this concept of that we never truly experience the present. The present is supposed to be the moment in time that is happening right now. And yet, even as I say that sentence, now happened 5 seconds ago. And so, even when we're thinking about ourselves as one being, we tend to think of our past selves as almost semi-completely different. We refer to them as our past selves. We don't refer to them as ourself. The person you were 10 years ago is not the person you are now. And yet, the person you were 5 seconds ago, you tend to refer to as the person you are now. Which I think is what supports this, argument, against the semantics of time. Because the present you isn't ever existing, and yet that is how we experience the world. We only experience it in little tiny pieces that are it's like frames. It's like if you ever animated anything before, you take each frame and you put them all together, and as you've drawn all these pictures in one fluid motion, however many frames per second that you're rendering this video in, it looks like a real video. Actually, that's how this video is being made right now. It's the video recording software puts into little frames and just strings them all together. And that's how you're seeing me right now. And yet each of those little moments, each frame is a fragment of, if we're talking about in the general scheme of life, is your existence. And is supposed to be the present, but we never truly experience the present. And so, that also lends credit to the ideas that the past and the future are abstractions of a concept that are not that well attributed, I guess you could say. They don't do time justice. I remember when I was younger, I would think of the future, my future self. I remember when I was like 13 or 14, thinking of what I would be like in college. Because even at that time, my future self, to me, was a different person. And so I came up with these ideas in my head of what I would be like, how I would be different, things like that. But now that I'm there, that I am currently living the future version of myself that the past version of myself thought of, I am not. Like, I am still the same person that I was back then, even though the person that I imagined my future self to be was a different person. If that makes sense, if I explain that well. Basically, what I'm trying to get at is that your past self, your future self are all you. There is no differentiation in who you were at one point in your life. They are all you. Because even though you are experiencing life in the present moment, in very many present moments that have been strung together along your entire life, that is only how you are experiencing it. That is how we understand the world. But your past and future self, in the grand scheme of time, which is, if you want to get into physics and quantum theory and relativity, time itself is another dimension that we do not completely understand. If you were to look at it from another being's perspective, and this is going to sound so stupid because we're going from philosophy to physics, but if you are thinking it from a relativistic perspective, somebody that studies relativity, I don't know if that's the right term, but all versions of you are equal in, I guess, their tangibility, their existence. The past you is just as real as the present and future you. Time is just how we experience it along the timeline, and yet each moment on that timeline is just as real as the others. Now that is all, I think, just very interesting to think about in terms of a thought experiment. And I think that the way I explained it does help to understand how the ways that we explain time are not entirely correct. And so I want to kind of bring this in another perspective, in a more philosophical direction, because many of us in our present moments, in the moment of your life you are in right now, you are often thinking about your future as well. And mostly, actually, most people nowadays are focused on their future, not really your past. The past already happened. The future is what is going to happen and what you can affect. You can't affect the past. And so I think people tend to gravitate towards the idea that where you are at in your life right now is the oldest you will ever be, which is a true statement. You right now are the oldest you will ever be. Oh no, that's not a right statement. You are the oldest you have ever been. That's what I meant to say. You are the oldest you have ever been in your entire life. And so as you grow older, as you get more years under your belt and you gain new experiences, you grow your own sense of self and you grow more confident because your experiences in life have grown. And so the new experiences in your life narrow. And so you tend to do things that you've already done before, which proves to yourself that you can do them because you've done them once before in your life. And because of this, I think we begin to overestimate our knowledge of life in the world, because at this point in our lives, this is the most amount of knowledge we've had about it. You know, when you were 10 years old, you had much less experience to go off of, and a lot less just know-how than you do at 20 or however old you are. And so we start to think we know everything. And you'll notice this conflict when you start to talk to people that are older than you, because they assume that they know everything, and they have had more experiences than you are. I mean, when you talk to your parents tend to believe that they know a whole lot more than you do and a lot better than you do because they've had a lot more experiences. And yet then in relation to them, your grandparents or anybody that's older has had a hell of a lot more experience than them as well. And everybody tends to start to overestimate their knowledge of how the world works. And so if that is the case, if everyone is overestimating their knowledge of the world, then I think it is safe to say that nobody really knows what the hell is going on. And on the other side of the token of you being the oldest you've ever been, you are also the youngest you will ever be, which leads you to having almost immunity, I would say. What's a better word for that? I guess I would say you are absolved of some of the blame that comes along with doing something stupid. Because you, at this point in your life, you do not have all the knowledge you will ever have. And you never really will. I mean, until the day that you die. You will not have experienced everything you will ever experience. And so it's okay to be stupid. It's okay to live life stupidly. And I say that with a bit of caution, but I feel like the world is so overly cautious now that it's okay to say that. People tend to want to tell you that you need to live your life a certain way. And that you, eventually, usually when you're getting these kinds of messages from people, you're coming into your, young adult stages, or maybe you're, fully an adult. I don't even know when that starts. It changes depending on who you're talking to. But you're told that because you now have enough experience under your belt, that you are expected to be smart and use those experiences in a way that will help you lead your life in a way that is the best that it can be done. I guess that's the best way to say that. If you did real well in school, in high school, or maybe even in college, you got a degree, you're told that you shouldn't skip out on, I guess, the opportunity that provides, and that it is smart and practical for you to use what you've gained so far to better your life in a way that others see fit. And yet, that does hold some credence if you are thinking of yourself as the oldest you've ever been. But if you were thinking about yourself as the youngest you'll ever be, well, you should be allowed to be a little stupid. So what if you went to college and got a degree and then realized you don't enjoy it anymore? You don't owe it to anybody to live your life perfectly. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter what you really do, because you will be living your life no matter what you do. Your future self will never be thanking past you because you're the same person. The decision you make for yourself now is a decision that you make for everyone. And I wish I could stress it in a way that sounded better. But lots of people tell you to live your life in a way that your future self would thank you. And yet not many people think about living their life in a way that their past self hoped that they would. It is so easy for you to look forward and say, oh, well, when I'm here, this is what I will want. You won't know that. You'll never know that. You know what you want now. And actually, you know what you wanted a year ago, 10 years ago, yesterday. And so wouldn't it make more sense to act off the information that you do have up to this point than off of some information or some idea that somebody is feeding to you, or something that you have dreamt up in your mind? I would say no. I would say it is okay to live your life impractically, to go after something that would satisfy you now, because your future self, which in this whole conversation isn't even really a real term in the grand scheme of time, your future self will thank you for doing what you wanted then, for pursuing something that really meant a lot to you. Because when you look back at it all, your future self, your present self, and your past self are all equally real and are all somewhat existing at the same time. So who you are now is who you were before and who you will be. And so do not act on the notion of these conjured up ideas in your head of this is who I will be, or this is what I should want. Go off of what you want now and what you think the way your life should be led. Hopefully that made some sense. Hopefully I enlightened you somewhat on what's been going on in my brain. And hopefully you can apply that somehow in your own life. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.